Think on a song you've listened to of recent. Oftentimes you may listen to a song just to do so. Sometimes it may be for a reason, to elicit a type of emotion from you, or an emotion that haunts you and is with you throughout your days. Songs can also be used for propaganda or serve a certain cause. Sometimes they do all of the above. The hymn of the Thunderlord, the anthem of the Abbadon, the song of the Nova Mortis. While the records of these songs seem to be snugly hidden from us, at least we have a few verses to go by. Today, however, it's time to let thunder reign again. Hey everybody, it's your buddy Beard Grizzly, and I know we've talked about Thunderlord a bit already, but I really have a hard time dropping this topic. I mentioned it in and made it the general point of my Allegiance video, but there's a major reason I feel it needs to be cataloged separately from that work. It deserves it. Thunderlord remains to be my favorite exotic to date. I use other weapons fairly often for the sake of my playstyle, and because other slotted weapons tend to be much weaker than the heavy slot, especially with Hammerhead in existence, but in my opinion, Thunderlord remains the monster I've always loved. With that acknowledgement out of the way, let's get into this story and why I find it incredibly important. We'll start with reading over the entry in full first, then getting into a few pieces of older lore for catch-up. They return from fields afar. The eye has passed. The end nears. Do not fade quietly. Let thunder reign again. Two they were, artist and scientist. Music flowed in their souls and rained from their lips. Not weapons of war they made, but instruments of peace. The thunder fell, and they were cast apart. Their love was sundered as the world collapsed. They sang in pain and sought to reunite, but crimson eyes glowed in the dark. Their union was not to be. He held death in his hands, stars burned in his footsteps. In her, the conflagration was reborn, the funeral pyre lit. And so forever after, their love fuels death. Their last words, a curse and a cry. Their names are now lost, but their love will not die. There are two sister guns of Thunderlord called Abbadon and Nova Mortis. Both of these guns were possibly formed from the frames of depleted Thunderlords, or simply born of need and reason from the Titan that formed them on the moon. We're still unsure if the Titan that created the two sister guns also created Thunderlord, but within the Nova Mortis card we get a hint of another maker being involved with the Thunderlord than this Titan that created the other two. From the space between I come. Fragments of stars burn in my footsteps. In my hands I hold death. Song of the Nova Mortis. Before he died on the moon, the Titan who wielded the first Thunderlord created two variants of the mighty weapon. Nova Mortis harnesses the power of the void. Notes found on the original schematics for Nova Mortis reveal its creator worried the weapon was as dangerous to its wielder as it was to those in its sights. With Abbadon, we get the lengths to which this Titan was willing to go in order to create these weapons of peace. I am one with the flame, the conflagration reborn. I am your funeral pyre. Anthem of the Abbadon. A variant of the Thunderlord outfitted with a prototype fusion modulation device, the Abbadon is built for rapid domination of the enemy. Its mechanism is a delicate balance of barely contained power and brute force. Every round it fires contains the potency of a sun. I've commented on the technology used in this gun already in a rather old video, which is part of the reason I wanted to revisit this topic again. Refreshes in old lore are always fun. All three of these weapons utilize technology that seems far and away from the usual of the city age. I still wonder how the technology was grasped by us in the city, but that's still a story for another day. Funny enough, might have been everything to do with Season of the Forge and why Thunderlord ushered it in, but I may have said too much already. Lastly, we'll highlight the Thunderlord Grimoire card from back in the day. It's short enough. They rest quiet on fields afar, for this is no ending but the eye. Hymn of the Thunderlord. Customized with an experimental induction core, the Thunderlord is a heavy machine gun built for the delivery of sustained punishment. The weapon's history and mechanism are both shrouded in ritualistic awe. Each round fired is another word in the legend, and the guardians who bear the Thunderlord will be immortalized in song. The ending to this has always made me scratch my head. Why would the ones that use Thunderlord be immortalized in song? What link and cause to them using this weapon would make them stand out so much more above someone that might use another weapon? I always thought it was something more akin to those that might have wielded Gjallarhorn, or how they were gifted with the weapon for surviving and having a hand in Twilight Gap, or Queensbreaker and its handlers behind the weapon. But with the newer entries we've received, this doesn't feel like it's the case. But that's not what I necessarily want to focus on. The one thing that has been sparse and still is are any accounts of the Battle of Mare Imbrium, known also as the Great Disaster. This is the battle in which Crota, son of Oryx, the Taken King, had wiped out thousands of Guardians. We can find this number on the Warlock 2 Grimoire card, focusing on the Warlock named Ariana III, another member of the Praxic Order similar to that of Honor, the zealous Warlock we see in Season of the Drifter. See how all these pieces are being reintroduced with time? I like that personally. Nice connecting material. Anyway, the Thunderlord card seems to fill in some gaps for us on the battle itself, and I'll leave the entry up as you possibly see what it is that I mean. I'll keep this in order of the cards since I think that that's the intent here. We're unsure how the battle got started. On the old Raze-Lighter Grimoire card, we do see that Lord Shax and Zavala get into a rather heated argument over returning to the moon, especially after the swords that the Hive use seem to have claimed several Guardians, and they only just scraped by through that initial skirmish. This happened at Burning Lake. Still not too sure about much information about that fight now that I think about it. It seems whatever equipment we have at that time isn't that powerful, nor that studied to stand up to the Hive equipment and tactics. From here, we know that there are thousands of Guardians that are assembled on the moon in order to try and take it back. There, they face off against Hive forces the likes that none have seen before. We find later this is Crota's forces, and they mean business. This is where the items of the Thunderlord entry start to come into play. The portion that is not spoken of is the early skirmishes. I feel it implied thanks to the flavor text readings that we have, where Thunderlord talks about an eye. I feel this is the eye of the storm, or in this case, the lull in battle that would be felt after the initial attacks on Hive forces. Guardian forces seemed to be pushing the Hive backwards, or at least that's my assumption. Considering we see that Ariana III had captured a Hive wizard for interrogation in the Warlock 2 Grimoire card, I'm given more reason to believe the Guardian force was standing a chance against the Hive. That is, until Crota landed on the field. The tale of Thunderlord specifically deals with two Guardians. One could be the creator of the sister guns, Nova Mortis and Abbadon, but nothing truly confirms that. It's implied, but not entirely said. I feel this is the case thanks to the line of two they were, artist and scientist. We also see that they both had a hand in the creation of these weapons with the following line, not weapons of war they made, but instruments of peace. I've always had this thought, however, that the three elemental principles were all present at the Battle of Mare Imbrium, where Thunderlord was created in an earlier setting and could be recovered for creation at a later time, which is why we have Thunderlord, but not the sister guns. This could mean that Thunderlord was wielded by another, while two others had the Abbadon and Nova Mortis. Anyway, that's a speculative point, but just something I wanted to bring up. After the Eye of the Storm or lull in combat had ceased, and possibly when Nova Mortis and Abbadon were fully assembled and ready to go, Crota showed up and started to rend the fields of Guardians of Flay. The two mentioned in the newest Thunderlord card seem to have already been separated before this point in combat had occurred, with the older Thunderlord Grimoire's flavor text. They rest quiet on fields afar. With the two weapons separated early on in the combat and covering different areas, this makes me wonder if they served in different forces amongst Guardianhood. Maybe one was a hunter or warlock that had to serve in the Praxis or another group for the hunters, while the Titan had to stay with his main combat unit. Maybe the Pilgrim Guard or the Firebreak unit, who knows? Just a thought. Battalions and platoons are not something we know too much of within Guardians, since we operate so often in fire teams of 3 or 6. We're also, especially today, not as widespread. We are not conquerors, as Zavala tends to say. The last part of this entry, however, is what really bothers me a bit and makes me wonder if there isn't more to this story that will be told later on, if we ever are. Their last words, a curse and a cry. Will we ever know what those last words that were said by each of them were? Will we ever be told of what their curse could be? Then again, perhaps that's the point. Every time we fire Thunderlord, we're left with a reminder of the curse that befell our compatriots on the moon. Every time we down a hive, we add another tally to the rap sheet that Thunderlord should have been involved with, where the weapon could have done so much more on the field of Mare Imbrium, but it just couldn't. And so forever after, their love fuels death. Their names are not lost, but their love will not die. I made mention of this before, but this line tears me apart. Aside from the survivors, and perhaps those close to those that may have died on Mare Imbrium, you rarely hear of the atrocity from the Great Disaster. You see the speaker's actions, however, a lunar interdiction that caused us to abandon the moon, leave it to the hive, in a hope that it would be all that we'd ever want. Instead of trying to understand what it was we fought against, we shut down and left it alone. No memorial, no remembrance. The vigil carried on by a few. To me, this is the greatest disaster of this entire tragedy. To not remember what got us to where we are. In the city, however, that seems more commonplace than it should be. Every time you use and wield Thunderlord, keep this in the back of your mind. You add on to the legends past, ones that gave their all for the Vanguard, for humanity, for Earth, and the future that we may possibly have. They went to extreme lengths to ensure they could combat whatever they fought, using incredibly dangerous potential within kit-bashed weapons. That didn't bother them, and for them, it seems to love and die on the battlefield was the greatest of gifts. That they couldn't be together in the end was the true tragedy. I appreciate you guys listening to this look into Thunderlord, or this revisit more than anything, and my thoughts on the entry itself. I hope you guys got a little something out of it. I'll leave things there for today. If you have any extra thoughts you would like to leave for us down in the comments, feel free to do so, along with subscribing, hitting the bell, and all that other jazz to show me what you thought of this piece. No matter where or when you are, I'll see you next space time. Take care.